Welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. So if that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. My guest today is Juanita Smith, who is a clinical hypnotherapist, trainer of hypnosis, author, addictions and trauma specialist, and life coach. Juanita is the author of Is It a Habit or an Addiction? And the co-author of Empowering Stories from Female Leaders Who Said, Why Not? I will be linking her website down below for your reference. Welcome, Juanita.
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on. So just to kind of begin, can you share a little bit about why you wanted to become a hypnotherapist and a little bit about the training required for a hypnotherapist?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I guess maybe, as I put in my book, Is It a Habit or an Addiction? Perhaps I was drawn to the field because of my own upbringing and background. So growing up surrounded by addiction and trauma myself may have drew me towards helping other people who were in a similar situation to people in my family, such as my mother and my auntie and people that struggled their own life. So perhaps that's why I was drawn to it. So I definitely do come from a deep place of understanding when I'm working with my clients for trauma and addiction, compassion, understanding, and really relatable because of my own experiences growing up. So the training, so it's more of an apprenticeship than anything else. So it's more, you can do so much theory, but until you put it into practice, it's really when you put it into practice, you really start to sort of understand it at a deep level, how to work with people. So I did a training course, but everything I've learned is from working with a mentor and working with clients directly, just building up that experience from that practical.
Okay, very good. And so have you been hypnotized before?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So what
lovely experience.
So what exactly is hypnosis and what does it feel like?
Okay, so hypnosis is basically working directly with the unconscious mind. It's safe, it's healthy, it's very therapeutic, it's very, very healing. It's just a natural state. So it's not like what you see on the movies or anything like that. Like a lot of people that come in are concerned that I'm going to, they make the jokes about, I'm going to get them to cluck like a chicken and all those jokes. And even I had a client come in yesterday and he was worried that I was going to make changes in his brain. So, to a certain extent, you are making changes for the good because people come to you because they're out of alignment. So people come and see me because consciously, sorry, this is my cat.
Oh, how cute.
Consciously, they want something, but unconsciously, they're receiving something else. And so they're out of alignment. So consciously, perhaps they want to be confident, but on an unconscious level, they just have a lack of confidence that they can't change. Or consciously, they want to be calm and relaxed, but on an unconscious level, they have an anxiety program running, so they're always anxious. So they're out of alignment. Their conscious mind wants one thing, but they've got something else programmed in their unconscious mind. And so that's completely out of alignment. And it's very, very, very difficult to change once when you've got that programming. So that's why people become my clients, because they're out of alignment. So of course, you're making changes with that. But people are worried that I'm going to do something to them that they don't want them to do, that they're not aware of, that's out of their control, something like what you see in the movies. And I can't make anyone do something that they don't want to do. So I'm just the coach. I'm just sort of coaching someone to make those changes within themselves on an unconscious level, achieve what they want to achieve in a very quick and effective shortcut way, because we're making the changes directly with the unconscious programming. So So how does it, so I mean, you do make changes, but it's not like someone can control you, or it's not dangerous or anything like that. I hope that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, how does it feel? Well, look, it's actually just a natural state that people go into all the time. So you go into that brainwave frequency when you're in a driving trance. You go into that brainwave frequency when you are engrossed in a good movie. You go into that brainwave frequency when you are daydreaming. So it's just a natural state that you go into all the time. You know, someone might say, be trying to get your attention, going, Lisa, you've been in that brainwave frequency, you've been in that trance state. And so it's you know, the average person goes into that trance state 7 to 10 times a day. So there's different frequencies. You've got beta brainwave frequency when you're wide awake and focused and at tasks. And then when you're asleep, you're in delta, which that brainwave frequency. And in between, you've got alpha and theta. And so if you just stayed in beta all day, you'd have a heart attack. If you stayed there, well, not all day, but if you stayed there all the time, you would have a heart attack. So people tend to drift sort of in and out. So they might be focused, and then they might sort of like drift down to theta or alpha, and then they sort of like focus again. So it feels very similar to as well to meditating. So when people come and see me for the first time, they're sort of wondering, what are you going to do? Is it going to be an altered state? Am I going to be knocked out? Am I going to be unconscious? So during the session, people just feel like they're relaxed. They're just listening to me talk to them. You're conscious, you're aware. It's very similar experience to meditating, if you've ever meditated. And really that's it. That's how it feels. So you should definitely have a hypnotherapy session, Lisa. I'm happy to offer you one. Awesome, experience. Awesome. It's very yeah.
So I had heard that it was, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's like putting somebody in a disassociated state. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, so you're not just putting them from one disassociated state to another.
No, I mean, unless what you're meaning is, if I worked with someone for trauma, I wouldn't want to put someone back into that traumatic state again. So I wouldn't take them back to a situation and put them into that state, like bring up a situation and say to them, imagine you're in this situation again, because that's putting them straight into it. So when you're thinking about it, your body's in it, and that could make someone feel very, re-traumatize someone. Absolutely. So if I'm working with someone for trauma or even phobias, we can do a technique. We can do disassociated and double disassociated. So just meaning, you're seeing that situation, what happened, but you're not in it, you're observing it. So that means you're disassociated from it. So you might be referring to that.
Okay, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know, and I've gone and watched like a hypnosis show, and I've seen it work for some people, and then I've seen it not work for some people. So what makes people susceptible to hypnotherapy, and maybe those that are not susceptible to it?
So every single person can be hypnotized. So before, as I said, everybody goes into that trance state. If you can go into the trance state between beta and delta into alpha and theta, you can be hypnotized. So everybody has to go through that state to fall asleep at night. When you wake up in the morning, you go through that state to wake up. So that if you can fall asleep, you can be hypnotized. So absolutely everybody can be hypnotized. But I think what you're referring to is that when you go and see a stage show, they pre-qualify people in the audience to see who would be suggestible enough to be in the performance. And so about 10 to 15% of the audience or the population or people are very, very, very suggestible. And so that for a stage show, you want to be that suggestible. So it's just like a sort of a sliding scale. So some people are at the very suggestible end, and some people are right down the other end where they're not very suggestible at all. And so, yeah, for a stage show, you'd need to be in that top 10 to 15%.
Is that based on personality, like agreeableness and not agreeable personality traits and so on?
I really don't. I'm not sure. I don't. That's an interesting question, actually. Yeah, I've had people. I get the feedback from my clients. They come in and say to me, "Oh, I went." You know, and I get very skeptical people coming in saying, "Oh, well, I didn't believe it at all, but I was just gone." I was nominated for the stage show, and I did the stage show, and it was me, but it wasn't me, and it was really weird. And they seemed like they were very, very skeptical. They didn't believe it. So I don't know really if that means anything. I'm really not sure. That's a really interesting question. What makes people more suggestible than other people? But absolutely, you know, so yeah, it's just a sliding scale. So, you know, some people that come and see me for hypnotherapy, so everybody can be hypnotized, very different from a stage show, because everybody can go into that state in between. From person to person, it varies. So some people come in and they're just gone. They're just sort of like, it's really obvious they're hypnotized. They're just really, they lose sense of space and time. They tell me afterwards, "Oh my God, that was amazing. The lights were flashing in my eyes." Yeah. And they're basically really, really close down to sleep very, very quickly. They drop from here to very quickly. And then obviously I assume that they would be very suggestible and they'd be the right person for a stage show. And then other people feel very conscious during the session. They feel like they're just listening to me talk to them. They feel relaxed, but they're listening to every word. They don't necessarily feel hypnotized, but they're still in theta. They're still in alpha. They're just in a very light trance. So they're just up here rather than down there. And so they still get the results. It's very obvious. I work with a lot of smokers. So that's, that's sort of where I've got all my proof from, really, because smoking is very, very black and white. Because you walk in a smoker, people have been they come to me and they're my clients because they've been trying to quit for years and they can't. It's just controlling them. They walk out, they never have a cigarette again. It's very obvious and very black and white. And so I sometimes have had clients that said, "I just felt like I was sitting there listening to you talk. I didn't feel hypnotized at all. And I walked out and I never had a cigarette again." And so that's where I sort of get my proof from, is with the very black and white smoking clients.
Very cool.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me saying, just one thing to add to that. So with the stage show, in case anyone's listening to this and they're wondering, you can't be made to do anything that you don't want to do. So just the same as hypnotherapy. So that's why you often see a hypnotist tap someone on the shoulder and send them off, because they've been asked to do something that they don't want to do. And they don't feel comfortable doing it on an unconscious level, so they won't do it. And so you don't have to worry, you know, being forced to do something on stage that you don't want to do.
Very good. So if somebody's going to prepare for a hypnotherapy session with you, what do they need to do? Do you recommend that they come in like tired at the end of the day so they can get into that lower wavelength? Like how do you prepare somebody for a hypnotherapy session?
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't think anyone really needs to prepare at all, to be honest. They just have to want. The only requirement needed is they have to want the change. That's all they need, because I often get people coming in who are very, very, people coming in because they're out of alignment. So often I'm working with people who are really stressed and really anxious and maybe don't have much time and that would be an extra, that would possibly for some people be an extra thing to do to prepare before they come in. So even when people come in and they're very stressed and anxious, or they've got their stuff going on, it all changes once we start. And then times better once we start. So they don't actually have to prepare before they come in. So just having to want the change. That's why, my clients have highly successful, effective results, because they wouldn't come and spend the money and take the time if they didn't actually want the change in their life.
Okay, very cool. And so what about age ranges? Do you work with children, or is there like with a minor, you have to have an adult in the room? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so I do work with children and not often, but I do sometimes. I love working with children Children are great. I love working when they get a bit older, especially, you know, from 12 through the teenage years. I love working with them. And it's great ages to work with to make those changes because their mind's very malleable. It's not really hardwired yet. We're working directly with the unconscious, with the programming. The programming comes from all those past experiences, and it's still very malleable. So working with children and teenagers, they get a very, very quick change, which is really exciting. So I do love working with them. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't found it necessary to have an adult in the room. They have the adult will come in the room for the chat part, and then they go out. Normally they've been my client. The parents have been my clients themselves as well, so they feel very comfortable with me. So I haven't felt the need to have an adult in the room at all. And so even with children, when you're working with children, they're in hypnosis anyway. They don't have that critical faculty between their conscious and unconscious. So they're actually in a state of hypnosis anyway. So you don't even have to do, you're probably familiar with a hypnotherapy session as in counting down, like 10, 9. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. So you don't even have to do that with a child. All you need to do is get them to shut their eyes, and you're just telling them a story, and you just get them to use their imagination. And I've had our children with extreme fear and anxiety because of past experiences, and 1 or 2 sessions through me getting them to close their eyes and using their imagination completely heal from that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that people need to be susceptible to it for it to be successful. Is there anything else that you would say that makes for an ideal candidate for hypnotherapy?
They want the change.
They want the change.
Yeah, that's really it, because every single person can be hypnotized. Mm-hmm. And so as long as that person wants the change in their life, then it's going to be highly effective for them. It's no point someone coming because someone else wants the change in their life. Mm-hmm. That's why sometimes I don't work with children as much, because sometimes the child might not want the change, but it's the parents thinking they need the change. So when I do get a parent calling on behalf of their child, I'll just say, well, look, as long as they want that change in their life as well, because I can't make someone do something they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's really the only requirement needed for it to be effective. And it doesn't matter if you're very suggestible or not very suggestible, you're going to get the result. So anyone wanting to change their life who's out of alignment and wants to change in their life is a great candidate for hypnotherapy. And I just find with my clients, it would be very unusual for someone to come to me and not get a result.
Okay, very good. So you had mentioned smoking as one of the addictions that you work with in hypnotherapy. What other addictions do you look at that hypnotherapy could be beneficial for?
All addictions. All addictions. Yes, absolutely. Because so basically, we're walking around. 95% of us are walking around 95% of the time on our programming. And our programming is made up in our unconscious mind, and our programming comes from past memories and past experiences. And so, but it's out of our control. It's our morals, our values, how we react to things, how we respond to things, all comes from our programming, which comes from all our past memories and experiences, mostly formed through childhood. So if you've got a child who's been raised in a very positive environment where they've had a lot of love and spoken to positively, and it's been a fantastic childhood and lots of joy and lots of happiness, they're going to have great programming. Most likely they're going to have they're going to have a good self-image of themselves as a result. But if you have a child who has grown up in a very dysfunctional environment, and they've been spoken to negatively, and maybe they've had neglect, or they've had a lot of fear, different things like that, that's going to create a very low, that programming is going to be very negative, and their self-image of themselves is going to be very low. And so So basically our morals, our values, our perspective of the world comes from that programming. And everything we learn becomes automatic and programmed in our unconscious. So for example, you learn to tie your shoelaces, now you do it automatically. You learn to drive a car, now you do it automatically. You don't have to think. When you're driving a car, you don't have to think, oh, what do I do next? You can have an engrossed conversation with someone in the car and still drive on autopilot because you learned it and it's become on autopilot in your unconscious mind. So everything you have learned in your life just becomes automatic. Like I can touch type. I learned to touch type at high school. Many years later, I can still touch type, but I would not be able to tell you where all the letters are on the keyboard. So my body, my unconscious mind and body remembers where all the letters are, but I consciously don't remember that. So with habits, it's something let's talk about smoking. It's the same with every habit. So someone starts has a cigarette and it probably tastes awful and they feel sick, but they repeat that action and do it again. And the reason they do that again is because they got something positive out of it. Maybe they felt like it was cool. Maybe they thought it was a good look. Maybe they just wanted to fit in with their friends. Whatever it was, they got something positive out of it. So they repeated that action and did it again and again and again. And it became a deeply ingrained habit out of their control. So nothing to do with nicotine. No one's addicted to nicotine, but that's a different story. They've just done something repetitively and practiced it and learned it, and it's become autopilot in their unconscious. And so it's the same with every habit. So it's the same when people come and see me with nail biting. They repeated that action over and over again. And later on, when they decide, I don't want to do this anymore, they find they can't stop because it's out of their control. It's an unconscious behavior. And the unconscious mind is thousands of times more powerful than the conscious mind. And so even though they consciously don't want to stop, they can't compete with their unconscious programming. So that unconscious programming, which I mentioned before, is very rigid and it's out of your control. It's very hard to change. So if someone's got a phobia and they're unconscious, it's very hard to overcome the phobia. If someone suffers from anxiety, it's very hard to overcome the anxiety. If someone's got a habit in there, it's very hard to break the habit because it's unconscious programming. And so when people come and see me for gambling, for alcohol, for different eating addictions, like maybe they're addicted to chocolate or lollies or something, for drugs, for shopping, for hair pulling, it's all the same. It's all the same. It's just become something that's out of their control. They don't want to do anymore, but it's just so automated that they can't stop it. As much as they try to stop it with willpower, they can't because it's part of their programming now.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so somebody's, wanting to come for weight loss. So when you do a hypnotherapy session, are you focusing on diet? Are you focusing on exercise, self-esteem, self-worth? Like, how do you help somebody with like a complicated issue like weight loss?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is so complex and so complicated. And there's many different approaches because it is so complex. So it's very different if someone comes to me for drugs or cigarettes. So I mean, most drugs, I just find most of the time, like drugs like cocaine or party drugs or marijuana, most of the time it's just a habit, believe it or not. Sometimes we've got to work with a deeper trauma. So I always have to, discover that on a consultation first. But a lot of the time it's just habit, had a great time, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. And it just becomes very habitual. Smoking, it's even if someone has got a lot of trauma, it's normally just an unwanted habit. It's very rare for it to be something deeper going on. But with food, totally different story. I'd say about 50% of people that come to me for food, it's just a symptom of something deeper going on. So we need to work on the deeper stuff. So for example, I had a lady and she wanted to lose 30 kilos. And when I had a consultation with her, it turns out that every time she had an anxiety attack, she would just binge eat. She'd go to the bakery and get lots of sugar buns and different things like that and just binge eat for about 4 hours. And so she was doing, besides that, she ate, she had very good habits with food and a personal trainer and very organized, but it was just every time she had an anxiety attack, which is about 3 or 4 times a week. So there was no point just trying to used hypnosis to get her off sugar, because that was just a symptom of the deeper issue. If we tried that, the next time she got anxious, she would just override it anyway. So from working with the anxiety and eliminating anxiety, which is also on an unconscious level, so as a habit, like it's like a habit as well. From work, just eliminating the anxiety, she no longer had the anxiety attack, she no longer ate the sugar, and then she lost the weight. So that's an example of having to work with something deeper. Sometimes there might be trauma, like deep trauma, that we need to let go of and heal. And then other times it's just bad habits. It's just, it's just a patterning with food that a person's had since they were a child. Their parents always made them eat big portions because they didn't want to waste food, and they're starving children in Africa, and they would get into trouble if they didn't eat all their food. So they just got into the habit of every night sitting down, watching TV, having a dessert. So they've got these bad habits with food, that's overeating, eating too much, eating the wrong foods. And so when it's just habits, bad habits, we can break up that patterning and create a new association and new habits with food, where people feel like eating a lot less. They desire healthier foods. They no longer want the sugar. They no longer want the junk. So I've got a lot of different techniques, so it can be specifically tailored for the individual when it comes to the food. Like, for example, I'm working with 3 men at the moment who are all doing the virtual gastric band. And so that's like going to the hospital and having the surgery, but without the surgery, it's done virtually with hypnosis. And in a few short weeks, one of them's 70 years old. He's lost 10 kilos in several weeks. He's eating a lot less for the first time in decades. One has done 2 sessions and has lost about 8 kilos. And the other one has done 3 sessions and he's lost about 6 kilos. And they've all, as soon as we started, they've gone from eating way too much food, the wrong food, constantly hungry, to just having small meals and being satisfied. So that's the power of hypnosis. None of them had underlying trauma, so we didn't need to work with any of that. But that's how much we're able to change the whole unconscious patterning and associations with food. So it's really exciting.
Okay, that makes sense. With regards to how hypnosis works, is this something that the person receiving it is just sitting there being quiet, they never talk or never respond, they just kind of listen to you for an hour and those messages, power of suggestion gets into their brain? Is that basically how it works?
Yeah, and sometimes it just depends on what we're doing, because I have lots of different techniques and approaches. I don't really, it's very rare that I get someone to speak during a session, but I might use ideometer signaling and get people to respond, which is quite handy, especially if it's a long, deep session where you're worrying that they might fall asleep. So I do get people to respond by nodding their head or raising the finger during the session, just to make sure that they haven't fallen asleep, or sometimes an agreement as well. So they're agreeing to all the suggestions.
Okay, very cool. So let's talk about providing evidence to potential clients. What do you do when somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I'd like some proof that this works?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can really give proof. They just need to go to my website and look at all the Google reviews and look at the Facebook, look at my Facebook reviews as well. Like, I have got a ton of reviews. Most of my business, I've got 2 busy clinics here in Sydney, Australia, and most of my business is actually through referral. And so people have the proof by the time they call me, because they know someone that's had an amazing result with me. I had someone come in yesterday and he booked in with me. He had all the proof he needed because he has had 6 friends come and quit smoking with me, and 6 of them quit in 1 session. So that's a very, very, very high success rate, considering he knows that all those people struggled for years to quit with many different methods before they saw me. So when people come in though, often they'll come in because of referral, or they might find me on Google or on my website and come in because they're desperate and they've heard that hypnotherapy might work, so they're going to give it a go. So I do spend a lot of time talking and going through everything with people so that it does make sense as much as it possibly can. And so, yeah, it becomes very, very logical and very down to earth. So I do manage people's expectations and go through everything with them. I don't just sit them in a chair and start the hypnosis, because I want them to try and have as much understanding as possible. So they do have more belief than they might have otherwise. But I find even when people are very skeptical still, it doesn't impact their session. They still get the results as long as they want the change.
As long as they want the change, yes. So there's lots of, word of mouth, referrals, case studies, testimonials. Take a look at those and maybe message or talk to somebody who's had it done to kind of look at it. What happens if it doesn't work with the client?
So that's very, very rare for someone to come to me and it doesn't work. Sometimes I might get someone struggling with a session, and if someone's struggling and they're not really getting the results, I normally can fix it with a second session. So it's more likely that we work further and it's sorted, because if someone's, so I like to be honest, I can't even remember someone where it's flat out hasn't worked. I'm sure, I mean, I might get someone like that maybe a couple of times a year. And I still think, well, if they worked with me further, then they would get the results, because I believe this works for everybody, because it's just, to me, from my experience working with clients, it's just so highly effective. So if someone is coming to me and they don't get the results, it's normally because on an unconscious level there's resistance and they're getting some secondary gain staying where they're staying. It might, so I'm sure some of your viewers would understand this. Like, I might get someone coming to me for anxiety, for example, which is very, very common. And they want the change, but they're still anxious after we've done a lot of work. And sometimes it's more comfortable to stay where you are, even if it is uncomfortable.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned at the beginning of this session that we were talking about how everybody's basically hypnotized in one way or another. And so we see it in a lot of different settings. I know, like the movie industry, the music industry, they send subliminal messages out there that they can put you in a trance, especially music. And so I think that's really interesting that we don't realize how much we are already hypnotized, and we have to even work hard to break those in our everyday life.
Yeah. So what did you mean by the last bit? Sorry, like you have to work hard to
break, like, when you're like, why am I watching this junk TV? Why am I listening to this terrible music? Like, you have to teach yourself to like become unhypnotized, turn off the TV, turn off that crappy music, because they kind of like pull you in.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Like that's another whole interview, going down that rabbit hole about how much we are hypnotized.
Yes. And I'm glad you're using your skills for good, because I know some people use this for not good, for evil. We see people like your cult leaders that, use hypnosis techniques to get people brainwashed, to get them to follow them. So that's definitely, we've seen it done in action in society. And I'm glad you're kind of showing it on the good side of what can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. And one other area that I think a lot where people might be hypnotized is in dysfunctional relationships, abusive relationships. Maybe it's a romantic relationship where you're with somebody who is, they have a spell over you, and you need to break that spell because it's not a healthy relationship. And so do you have a lot of people come in for that? I mean, that's a wanting to change and getting out of a relationship. And sometimes people don't want to get out of those relationships.
Yeah, I do actually. And it's more about what's going on within them. So when come to me and they've got, toxicity around them and negativity around them, and people are emotionally charging them and hurting them, it's more about what's going on within their own self-image. So we work on that deep down self-image, and once we work internally, it changes everything externally. It's quite incredible to watch, actually.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, how long does a hypnosis last? Like once you go through one of these?
Sure.
Does it wear off?
It should be permanent. So if someone comes to me for an unwanted habit, it should stay with them permanently. Of course, if someone came to me for an unwanted habit, but I can't take away someone's free choice, so they can choose to create that habit again.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for example, if they've stuck on the pokey machines, if we break the habit of the pokey machines, if they want to, be back on the pokey machines again, then they can go back on. They'll open up the old neural pathways. They'll bring it. But as long as they don't choose to go on the pokey machines, then they'll find they've got that freedom and that control forever. It will never suddenly come back. They'll never wake up one day and go, oh my gosh, I've just got this overwhelming urge to go and play the pokies. It's just a permanent result, but I can't take away choice.
So do you have to address the environment and the triggers in the environment when you're dealing with people's addictions for it to be successful?
We do talk about triggers and all of that. Absolutely. So once we finish the treatment, they'll find that they can keep their routine and do everything they've always done. They don't have to change anything in their life, so they're not triggered, because all the triggers have been disconnected and the habit's broken. So they can do all those things and find, wow, I'm doing this and I'm still not wanting a cigarette. I'm still not wanting to go on the poker machine. So yeah, we do address triggers.
Mm-hmm. So let's say, especially for the bad hypnosis, how do we break those bad ones?
Say again?
So how do you break a hypnotist, like being hypnotized? How do you break somebody from being hypnotized?
Right. Okay. So at the end of the session, basically we do what's called a reorientation. And so you've got your different parts of the session, and at the end, we just bring them back up. So they've gone down into trance, or sometimes you can ascend into a trance, but go down into trance, and they're in that nice trance state. And then at the end, near the end, we do what's called the reorientation. Say, now we're going to bring you back up, and I'm going to count to 5, and then it just brings them back up, and they're just back up and awake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so do people report that they remember the whole session, or do they kind of black out periods of it?
It's different from person to person. So if they're in a very light trance, then some people say, I remember absolutely, I felt very conscious. I remember everything you said. But it kind of distorts reality as well. So sometimes I'll say to someone, if I do say a 1-hour session, I'll always say, just to get an idea of how they're feeling, I'll just say, so if you had to guess off the top of your head, first of all, they might say to me, they come out of trance, and then they'll say, I remember, I felt very conscious, I felt very aware, I heard every word you said. And then I'll say, so if you had to guess off the top of your head, how long do you think that went for? And they'll say, 10 minutes, but it went for an hour. Mm-hmm. So they've basically squashed every single word into 10 minutes because they've just got so distorted, but they feel like they heard and remembered everything. So I think it also depends on how someone feels on the day. So if someone's more tired, it just depends. It's just like if you sat on the couch and watched a movie. Sometimes you might watch a movie and you might be wide awake and hear every word and very focused, but other times you watch a movie and you're kind of like sort of dozing off a bit and you kind of forget what happened. So it can be like from person to person, session to session. So some people might just forget what happened because they were kind of almost asleep.
Okay. And how many sessions does it take to make?
It depends what people are coming in for. So if people come to me for addictions, normally we do one big massive session, and that's, most people only need that. Sometimes someone might need a second session. It's there for my work with people until they're free of the addiction habit, unwanted habit. But most people I see them once for that. When people come and see me for trauma and anxiety, it's usually 4 to 6 sessions. So it just, and weight loss as well. A weight loss program is a lot more complicated than someone coming to me for other habits. So that's normally a few, 2 to 4 sessions as well. So, but you don't need a lot of sessions to get that, that transformation in your life, because it's a shortcut to change. Because rather than trying to make the changes just with your small conscious mind, you're working directly with that unconscious programming. So sometimes, as I do work with a lot of people for trauma and anxiety, and sometimes people have been trying to overcome this stuff for decades, and they've gone to therapy like week after week, year after year of therapy, and they really haven't had any change because they're trying to do it consciously. But when they come in to see me, we just change it all within 4 sessions.
Amazing. Really,
it is
really
amazing.
Yeah. So you obviously probably do face-to-face, but do you do online sessions as well?
Yes, absolutely. I work with a few people in America, actually.
Okay. And how effective, that's got to be different than actually being in the room with the person than trying to do it online.
It's exactly the same. There's no difference. People are worried about that, but there's absolutely no difference because my only tool is my voice. So if I can see someone like I'm seeing you, and I get people to put headphones on, so the voice is very clear going directly into their brain, and I just get them to relax with their head supported. And it works exactly the same, because if they're in the room, they'd have their eyes closed listening to my voice. Online, they've got their eyes closed listening to my voice. So there's no difference.
No difference. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the cost is going to be dependent on what the addiction is, and obviously how many sessions there are.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just depends what people are coming and see me for. Like if people are coming to see me for some addictions or food, there's different programs. There's different prices according to the program. If someone's just coming to see me for a 1 hour session, so normally people coming to see me for confidence and anxiety and depression and grief and anger and all these things, we just book in a session as we go, and that's 200 Australian dollars for an hour. Yeah, and you only need, as I said, 4 sessions.
Okay, that's interesting. The grief one we didn't touch on, but people can come to you because sometimes people stay in chronic grief for years and they just,
Yes.
they can't move on. So that's really interesting that you also have some hypnotherapy for grief individuals.
Absolutely. It's just so powerful. We release it. They're holding on to this. And we literally can release it, the mind-body connection. I had a lady I worked with online because she's in Perth and I'm in Sydney, and she could not get over the grief of losing her brother in a plane crash. And not only that, but she also had like 2 terrible divorces and like overthinking, thoughts in her head, just felt very, very, very heavy. And we did 4 sessions, and even years later, she still messages me and just says, ever since we did that work, I mean, I miss my brother, but it's like a cushioning around the grief. Like it's not so painful. I feel light now and I feel present, and I no longer have the overwhelming thoughts. So it just transformed everything for her. It just gave her peace and comfort and lightness and being able to be present and happiness as well. So one thing people get out of this, they get being present, they get the being relaxed, calm, peaceful, but the happiness. So often my clients have missed the happiness, and we bring the happiness back. I do a lot of NLP techniques as well. So a lot of my work is in NLP, but it's just a state of mind, and you can change the body's response. So it literally, if any of your audience are feeling like they can't find any happiness or joy, you can actually just think of a past memory where you were really happy, and you can bring that back into the present. So we do that sort of work with hypnotherapy, which makes it even more effective. But you can lift your vibration up and your energy up just by recalling a past memory when you were happy.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about something in the past where you felt depressed and staying stuck in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can do a process where we anchor in the joy and the happiness and bring it back into the now. And that can change. That changes your, when you change your thoughts, you can change, you change your emotions, and you change how you feel in your body as well.
That is huge. The mind-body connection that you're talking about, because so many times trauma gets stuck in the body and people are just stuck in their grief, stuck in their pain. And the fact that, hypnotherapy is just not a psychological thing going on, that you can actually get in, like you said, bring more peace and happiness and a lightness, it sounds like, that people can get from these sessions that's a profound change for people's lives.
Absolutely. It really is. It's very transformational. Yeah. So, and I mean, and it's just the mind-body connection. So a lot of people have got the physical ailments. Mm-hmm. So when we fix the mind, it fixes those ailments as well. Mm-hmm. It's directly, people don't realize it's actually direct correlation. So, if you think about, if you're anxious, what are you doing? Often, how are you feeling that anxiety? You're feeling it in your, you might need to run to the toilet, or you might have a racing heart, or you might have sweaty palms. If you had a heart attack, and what would your doctor say? Don't be stressed, because stress could cause another heart attack. How do you get stressed? By thinking certain thoughts. So it's all connected.
Yes, disease is dis-ease.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. That's huge, the mind-body connection. You had mentioned NLP. For the listeners that don't know what that stands for or what that is, can you briefly touch on what NLP is?
It's a neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah, so it's also working directly with the unconscious mind with different processes and techniques. Yeah.
Okay. So how is it different or related to hypnotherapy? You're not
doing it in hypnosis. So with hypnotherapy, if I do a hypnotherapy session with someone, I'm sort of relaxing them into a trance state, which with NLP you're not doing that.
Okay, so you're wide awake.
Yeah, you just get them to close their eyes, and so I just dabble in it. I just do some NLP processes. I'm not I just sort of add that in. I'm not an official NLP master, where my foundation is timeline therapy. So if you went to an NLP master, they would be doing timeline therapy for you. They wouldn't be doing hypnotherapy. So yeah, but some of the processes are fantastic, like getting people to change their association and with certain things, and change the body's response. So it's a lovely connection.
Yeah, Tony Robbins, isn't he a master of NLP? If you've ever watched some of his seminars and the way he can get the audience to react and to do things, he's definitely sending some messages out there, hypnotizing his audience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. He's awesome.
Yes. Okay, so we're getting here to the end of our chat. Do you have any final thoughts on hypnotherapy that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so I haven't really thought about this, but I've been doing this for a number of years now, and I'm just always completely amazed at how effective it is, and the amazing transformational results that my clients get. So I guess if anyone has, if any of your audience do feel like they're out of alignment, it's definitely worthwhile. It's, if they're out of alignment, it's what's going on in the unconscious, and that's coming from past memories and experiences. And so hypnotherapy just is a very, very quick, effective way, a shortcut to change, to get back into alignment. So if anyone, I don't know how you do your interview, if you can add my details or anything like that.
Oh, I'll put it down in the description box so people can find you.
Okay, awesome. So if anyone would like a courtesy consultation and have a chat with me about what's going on, and I can go through it more specifically for them and how it can help them personally.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Juanita, for coming on my channel today and sharing your expertise in hypnotherapy. I sure do appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. And if you guys like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave a comment down below. Also share the video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be alerted to when the next video drops. Thanks for watching.